That's where world-renowned doctors and researchers conduct decade-long investigations into the countless claims of cures reported over the years.
After 140 years since this Catholic nun died, her body is mysteriously unchanged. The story of Saint Bernadette Soubirous is one of the most fascinating mysteries in the Catholic Church. Over 140 years ago, she died as a young nun at the age of 35. But today, her body remains almost completely unchanged, almost like she passed away just recently. But how can this be possible? Was it a miracle, or is there a logical explanation? Keep watching, because what you're about to uncover might just blow your mind. Saint Bernadette Soubirous was born as Marie Bernadette Soubirous on January 7, 1844, in Lourdes, a small town in France. Her family was very poor, and they lived in tough conditions. They didn't have much money, so they ended up living in a small underground room that was once used as a jail. This room was cold and damp, and the locals called it the dungeon. Despite these hardships, Bernadette's family stuck together and did their best to make ends meet. Bernadette had a difficult childhood, mostly because she was often sick. As a baby, she nearly died from cholera, and later on, she suffered from severe asthma that made it hard for her to breathe. Her health problems kept her weak, and because she was often unwell, she didn't grow very tall. In fact, as an adult, she was only about 4 feet 7 inches tall. Her poor health also made it hard for her to go to school regularly, so she struggled with reading and writing. People sometimes made fun of her because she couldn't memorize her religious lessons well, and she wasn't good at speaking French. Instead, she spoke Occitan, a local language common in the Pyrenees region where she grew up. Despite these challenges, Bernadette had a strong faith in God. Even when people were mean to her, she would remind them that she always knew God's love, which gave her strength and confidence. In February 1858, something incredible happened to Bernadette Soubirous that would change her life forever. She was just 14 years old when she experienced her first vision while out collecting firewood with her younger sister and a friend. It was a cold and rainy day, and the three girls decided to go to a place called the Grotto of Massabielle, a dark and rocky cave near Lourdes. As they searched for wood, Bernadette stayed behind, trying to find a spot where she could cross the river without getting her feet wet. While she was sitting and taking off her shoes, she suddenly heard the sound of rushing wind. But when she looked around, nothing was moving, not the trees or the grass. It was then that she noticed a strange figure inside the cave. The figure was a young woman dressed in a bright white robe with a blue sash and a rosary in her hands. She was surrounded by a glowing light, making her appear almost otherworldly. Bernadette was both shocked and amazed. Without saying a word, she knelt down and started praying the rosary with the mysterious woman. This vision was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Bernadette claimed to have seen the woman a total of 18 times. During these visits, the woman spoke to Bernadette, giving her small messages and words of encouragement. One of the most important moments happened when the figure told Bernadette to drink water from a spring inside the grotto. The problem was, there was no visible spring. But Bernadette obeyed, dug her hands into the muddy ground, and found fresh water. By the next day, the spring was flowing with clear water, which locals soon believed had healing properties. After hearing about Bernadette's visions at Lourdes, people were eager to know whether her experiences were real or just a figment of her imagination. The Catholic Church took these claims seriously because they involved visions of the Virgin Mary. In the beginning, the local priests were skeptical, and the authorities were worried that the entire town might be tricked or led astray by false miracles. The Church needed to investigate carefully to determine if there was any truth to what Bernadette was saying. To start the investigation, the Church set up interviews with Bernadette. They asked her many questions about the visions, testing her memory and her honesty. Even though she was young and uneducated, Bernadette's answers were clear and consistent every time. She never changed her story, even when the questions were difficult or when people doubted her. Her sincerity and the way she described the figure in the grotto made a strong impression on the priests. It seemed unlikely that a poor, sick girl from a small town could invent such detailed and meaningful experiences. As part of the investigation, Church officials also examined the spring at the grotto. They wanted to see if there was anything special about the water that might explain why people believed it had healing powers. Over time, several cases were reported where people claimed to have been cured of serious illnesses after drinking or bathing in the water. The church carefully documented these stories, looking for evidence of genuine miracles. They found that some of the healings could not be explained by medical science at the time, which made them take Bernadette's claims more seriously. Eventually, the church decided that there was enough evidence to declare that the visions were authentic. In 1862, just 4 years after the first apparition, the Catholic Church officially recognized Bernadette's visions as real. They declared that the Virgin Mary had indeed appeared to her at Lourdes. This was a huge moment for Bernadette, who had faced so much doubt and skepticism. It also marked the beginning of Lourdes becoming a major pilgrimage site, as people from all over the world wanted to visit the grotto and the spring. After the church recognized the visions, Bernadette Soubirous became famous. But fame was something she never wanted. All she ever wanted was to live a quiet and humble life. People began to treat her like a celebrity, with many traveling long distances just to meet the girl who had seen the Virgin Mary. For Bernadette, this sudden attention was overwhelming. She was a shy and humble person who didn't enjoy being the center of so much attention. Instead, she sought a peaceful life away from all the noise. To escape the constant attention, Bernadette decided to join a convent. In 1866, she became a nun at the Sisters of Charity in Nevis, France. She chose the convent life because she wanted to dedicate herself fully to God and find a place where she could live quietly. Life at the convent was not easy for Bernadette. The other nuns were strict, and some didn't believe her story about the visions. They thought she might have been seeking fame or making things up. Bernadette never tried to argue or prove herself. She simply remained quiet and focused on her duties. Her main job was to work in the infirmary, caring for sick nuns. Even though she was often in pain herself, she did her best to help others. During her time at the convent, Bernadette continued to face serious health issues. She developed tuberculosis, a painful disease that affected her lungs and made it hard for her to breathe. The illness became so severe that she spent most of her final years bedridden, unable to walk or do much work. Despite her suffering, she never lost her faith. She believed that her pain was a way to be closer to God and offered it up as a form of prayer. Bernadette passed away on April 16, 1879, at the age of 35. Her last words were a prayer, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for me, a poor sinner." She died peacefully, surrounded by the other nuns. Little did anyone know, her story was far from over, as what happened to her body after death would become even more extraordinary. 30 years after the death of Saint Bernadette Soubirous, something incredible happened. In 1909, the Catholic Church decided to exhume her body as part of the process to make her a saint. Exhumation means digging up the body to check its condition, and it is a common step in the canonization process. Church officials wanted to examine her remains to collect relics and see if there were any signs of decay. Normally, a body buried for such a long time would have decomposed completely, but what they found shocked everyone. On the morning of September 22, 1909, a group of doctors, priests, and local officials gathered at the convent cemetery. They removed the heavy stone covering her grave and carefully opened her coffin. As they unscrewed the lid, they expected to see nothing but bones. Instead, they were stunned to find her body almost perfectly intact. The doctors present reported that there was no smell of decay, which is very unusual after 30 years. Her skin was still soft, her hair was in place, and even her eyelashes were visible. Her body was still dressed in the nun's habit, which had become damp from the moisture in the ground. Her hands were crossed over her chest, still holding a rosary that had rusted from the years underground. Despite the rust on the rosary, her fingers and nails were perfectly preserved. Her face, although pale, looked peaceful, and there were no signs of the typical decay that happens to most bodies. This level of preservation was so unusual that the doctors couldn't believe their own eyes. They carefully documented everything they saw and made an official report. According to the medical records, her muscles were still attached to the bones and her skin clung tightly to her body, showing no signs of rotting. After examining her body, the doctors decided it was safe to clean her and dress her in a fresh habit. They carefully washed her and changed her clothing before placing her back in a new coffin. The first exhumation of Saint Bernadette in 1909 left everyone amazed by the incredible preservation of her body. But this was not the end of the story. The Catholic Church decided to exhume her body 2 more times, once in 1919, 10 years after the first exhumation, and again in 1925. In 1919, the second exhumation took place. By then, another 10 years had passed, so the doctors expected to find her body in a more decayed state. However, when they opened the coffin, they were once again shocked. Although her body showed some changes, it was still remarkably well preserved. Her skin had dried out a bit, and there were some dark patches on her face and hands, likely from the moisture in the coffin. Despite these minor signs of aging, the doctors noted that her muscles were still firm and her skeleton was completely intact. The lack of a foul odor was surprising, as this is usually a sign of decay in a body that has been buried for so long. One of the most astonishing discoveries during the second exhumation was the condition of her internal organs. Dr. Comte, one of the doctors present, reported that when he examined the liver, it was still soft and almost normal in texture. This was highly unusual because the liver is one of the first organs to decompose after death. The fact that it remained in such a good state amazed the medical experts, leading them to believe that something extraordinary was happening. The third and final exhumation took place in 1925. By this time, the church had decided to move Bernadette's body to a new resting place, a crystal coffin in the chapel of Saint Gildard in Nevers, France. Before placing her in the glass case, the church took molds of her face and hands to create wax coverings. This decision was made because her skin had become discolored over the years, and the wax masks would help preserve her peaceful appearance for visitors. During the third exhumation, the doctors noticed that her face had become slightly darkened and her nose had thinned out a bit. Despite these changes, the rest of her body remained in an incredible state of preservation. According to Catholic teachings, the bodies of saints are sometimes protected from natural decay because they lived in a way that was deeply connected to God's will. It is seen as a sign of God's favor and a reminder of the promise of eternal life. The Catholic Church uses the term incorrupt to describe bodies that remain in a surprisingly good state after death without any human intervention, like embalming or mummification. For the Church, it's not about having a perfect-looking body, but about the unusual preservation that defies normal decay. The body does not have to be in the exact same condition as when the person was alive, but it should show signs of having been protected from the usual process of decomposition. In Bernadette's case, her body was found to be almost lifelike even decades after her burial, which was seen as a miraculous sign. So what do you think? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story as fascinating as we did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.